The hollow knock of the blueprint tube rolling across the kitchen floor was the last sound of Nia Holbrook's old life. She had left the studio on King Street with her arms full, the revised site drawings, 2 rolls of finished samples bound in craft paper, and the presentation board she'd rebuilt twice that week to get the material story exactly right. The Lakeview bid pitch was tomorrow morning. Craig had asked her to bring everything home tonight so they could run through it together. She'd taken the elevator up to their Corktown condo, still thinking about the lighting specifications on slide 14. She heard it before she understood it, a laugh, low and too comfortable, coming from the direction of their bedroom. The kind of laugh that belongs to someone who has been in that space many times before. The blueprint tube slipped from her hand. It rolled 3 feet and came to rest against the leg of the console table. The $2,000 console table Craig had picked out specifically because it photographed well for the investor newsletters. Brooke Keller was 26. She had been Craig's marketing coordinator for 2 years. Craig had mentioned more than once that she was exceptional at her job, as though Nia should be grateful for the information. When Brooke pulled the sheet up and met Nia's eyes across the room, there was no shame in her expression. Just a kind of impatient readiness, like she'd been rehearsing for this exact moment and was simply waiting for it to begin. Craig sat up and reached for his shirt. "You're home early," he said. "We have the pitch tomorrow," Nia said. Her own voice sounded like it was coming from somewhere distant and controlled. "You asked me to bring the Lakeview drawings." "Right." He said it the way you say right when you've already moved past a subject. He stood, pulled his shirt on and turned toward the hallway. "There's something on the kitchen counter for you." She found it beside the coffee maker, a manila envelope thick and official looking, with her name typed on the front. Inside, divorce papers already signed by Craig, already reviewed by a lawyer she had never heard of, filed in accordance with Ontario family law, respondent's signature required. "My lawyer put it together," Craig said from the doorway. He was fully dressed now. Holding a glass of water like this was a quarterly review. "The settlement terms are straightforward. You won't need representation for something this clean." Nia stared down at the papers. 7 years of marriage reduced to a manila envelope. 7 years of turning down her own commissions to help Craig build Harwood Property Group from a 2-person operation into one of Toronto's mid-market development firms. "Clean," she said. "Simple. Fair." He poured himself more water. "I've accounted for everything properly. You'll have your personal savings and 4 months of support while you get established." "You've been planning this." He didn't deny it. "About 8 months," he said. "The timing needed to work. We're expanding, the Lakeview bid, the distillery district renovation. I need the business stable through a transition. My lawyer made sure the split won't touch any of that." The Lakeview bid. The 30-page presentation sitting in a roll on her living room floor. The one she had spent 11 consecutive evenings building, the site analysis, the material palette, the sustainability framework, the entire spatial narrative that made Harwood Property Group look like it possessed design intelligence it had never possessed on its own. "Where are you planning to live?" Nia asked. Craig glanced briefly toward the bedroom. "We'll work out the logistics." Brooke appeared in the hallway then, dressed now in Nia's gray cashmere pullover, taken from the closet apparently, as though that were simply something one did. The sheer audacity of it landed somewhere so far outside normal behavior that Nia almost laughed. "I'll get my things," she said. "You don't need to worry, I won't make a scene." She packed one overnight bag, her laptop, her external hard drives, her sketchbooks. She left the presentation board on the floor. Denise Crawford lived in Leslieville in the kind of century home that takes a decade of careful renovation to get right. She opened the door before Nia finished climbing the porch steps and pulled her inside without a word. And that was when Nia's composure finally gave out. Standing in the front hallway of her best friend's house, coat still on, bag dropping from her shoulder, 8 years of accumulated grief coming undone all at once. Denise sat with her through all of it. They'd known each other since second year at Ryerson, assigned adjacent studio spaces, and had spent the next 3 years arguing about theory and stealing each other's markers. Denise knew how to be present without filling the silence. When Nia could finally speak, she told her everything. "He submitted the Bayview townhouse designs under Harwood's name," she said. "I designed every one of those units from scratch. The room proportions, every finish, every spatial decision. He told me it was simpler to keep everything under the company umbrella for the permit applications." I believed him. Denise's expression moved through several distinct phases. Fury arrived first, then something more measured. The look of someone who had suspected something for a long time and is not entirely shocked to be proven right. And then, Denise said. Those drawings won the Toronto Residential Design Award in February. I was standing in the room when they called his name. Naya paused. I clapped. Naya. The settlement offer gives me 18% of the home equity, 4 months of spousal support, and my personal savings. Nothing from the business, nothing that acknowledges any contribution I made over 7 years. Denise picked up her phone. You need Pamela Kwan. Pamela Kwan's office was on Bay Street, 17th floor, with a clear view of the lake on good days. She was somewhere in her early 50s, with a focused stillness that made you want to be precise. She listened to all of it without interrupting, making notes in a small leather notebook, and when Naya finished, the first thing she asked about was the original design files. Everything I design starts in my personal software environment, Naya said. Time-spent project folders, the Bayview drawings, the originals, are on my hard drive. Creation dates, revision history, all my correspondence with the contractor. Does Craig have access to those? He has the final exports, not my working environment. Pamela's smile was precise and unsentimentally pleased. Then you have an intellectual property claim alongside the matrimonial asset dispute. He submitted your work under his company name to a formal design body. That is not a gray area. She retained a forensic accountant named Anton, who had a background in corporate financial tracing and the methodical patience of someone who genuinely enjoyed finding things that were not meant to be found. Within 3 weeks, Anton had identified a pattern. Craig had been routing a portion of Harwood Property Group's project revenues through a numbered holding company registered in Alberta, a company Naya had never heard mentioned in 7 years of marriage. Conservative estimate, $1.4 million sitting outside the matrimonial estate. There was something else. Craig had signed the commission agreement for the Lakeview project 6 months before filing for divorce. He had known the contract money was coming. He had arranged to receive it without her. Craig called from an unfamiliar number on a Thursday morning and got straight to it. You've retained a forensic accountant. Hello, Craig. I'm trying to offer you a clean path and you're making this into something adversarial for no reason. Someone ran project revenues through a numbered company in Alberta for over a year, Naya said. That's not a marriage ending, that's fraud. Those are operational decisions. The tax structure is legitimate and my accountant can explain. He's welcome to explain it to Pamela Kwan's accountant. She watched the view from her new apartment window, a narrow slice of the Don Valley. You should also know I've begun contesting the design attribution on the Bayview Award. I have the original project files. Creation timestamps, revision history, supplier emails addressed to my personal accounts. The silence lasted 4 full seconds. That award was submitted by Harwood Property Group, he said. The commission went to Harwood. The design came from me. The Toronto Residential Design Association understands the difference. She kept her voice even. Sign the full financial disclosure, Craig. That's the only path that ends cleanly for you. He requested a face-to-face meeting the following week. No lawyers, just the two of them. She brought her phone set to record and wore a jacket with a deep chest pocket. He chose a cafe in the annex neutral public. He arrived 5 minutes early and projected calm with the focused deliberateness of a man who had decided it was a strategy. He'd lost weight. The quality she had once admired in him, that sense of always having thought 4 moves ahead, was still visible, but it had a new texture now, something clenched. I'm prepared to offer 40% of the home equity, he said. 8 months of support. A written acknowledgement that you contributed design consulting to Harwood under an informal arrangement. A consulting arrangement. It's cleaner, legally cleaner. For whom? For both of us. He wrapped both hands around his mug. You're spending money fighting something you can't win. The business is mine, I built it. You built it with my designs, my client relationships, and the $11,000 I wired from my personal savings account in year 2 when your operating line was frozen. She kept her voice pleasant. I have the transfer records. I also have the email where you described it as a bridge loan. His jaw tightened. Between spouses, that kind of arrangement is treated as. Tell me something honestly. She looked at him across the table. Did you start planning the divorce before or after you knew the Lakeview contract was coming? A beat too long passed. Before, she said. You knew the money was coming and you wanted to structure the split before it became a matrimonial asset. That's why you had papers ready on our anniversary. The Lakeview contract is a Harwood contract. The Lakeview presentation is my work. Every drawing, every material specification, the entire conceptual framework. She picked up her coffee. You should speak to your lawyer before our next conversation. She walked out, her hands didn't shake until she was half a block down Bloor Street, and even then it was adrenaline, not fear, entirely different things. She had been taking contract work through a small firm on Spadina when the Canadian Design Expo came to Montreal in the spring. She went because she needed to remember what it felt like to stand in a room full of people who cared about built space for its own sake. She was examining a timber joinery display in Hall C when someone stepped backward into her and nearly upset her coffee. "My fault entirely," the man said, turning. "I'm so sorry." He stopped. "Nia Holbrook." Xavier Mensah. She recognized him immediately. Founder of Mensah Built, a sustainable development firm based in Vancouver with an expanding presence in Ontario. His company had been competing with Harwood Property Group for the Lakeview waterfront contract, the very contract Nia had designed the pitch materials for. "I know who you are," she said. "You presented at the Sustainable Cities Forum 2 years ago. Your argument about passive design in dense urban housing was the sharpest thing I heard that day." He looked momentarily caught off guard, like he'd been prepared for a different kind of exchange. "Thank you. I know who you are as well." He said it carefully. "Your name is connected to the Bayview Townhouse project. I followed that award closely, because I knew those designs and they were exceptional. Except Craig Harwood accepted the award," Nia said. "Yes. That's being addressed." Xavier looked at her steadily. He had the manner of someone who processes things before speaking. "I thought it might be. Those designs don't carry his fingerprints anywhere." They got real coffee 2 blocks from the convention center. They talked for 2 hours. About the Lakeview site. About the particular difficulty of doing considered work inside systems that don't reward consideration. About what it actually means to build something that respects the people who will live inside it. He asked her opinion on a zoning challenge Mensah Built was navigating in Hamilton, and she found herself sketching a schematic on a napkin before she'd consciously decided to engage. "You should be running your own practice," Xavier said, watching her draw. "I had one. I stepped back from it. For Harwood. For what I believed Harwood was." She folded the napkin. "I'm rebuilding." He asked whether she'd be willing to consult on the Lakeview proposal from Mensah Built's side, not competitively, but as a designer who understood the site better than anyone. She said she'd think about it. On the train back to Toronto, she thought about very little else. The legal proceedings moved forward over 2 months. Pamela filed the full motion, matrimonial asset dispute, fraudulent concealment, and a supporting application to the Toronto Residential Design Association for attribution correction. Harwood's legal team challenged Anton's forensic accounting at every point. They argued that design contributions made by a spouse to a family business were not separable intellectual property. Judge Marianne Taste did not appear to find this argument persuasive. The hearing took 3 days. Pamela walked through the evidence in sequence. The original file timestamps, the contractor emails addressed to Nia's personal account, a letter from the Bayview general contractor confirming that all design direction had come from her, then the numbered Alberta company, then the Lakeview contract timing, then the recording from the Annex Cafe, entered into the record in full. Craig took the stand and said he had always understood Nia's contributions to be part of the natural operation of their shared life together, not a separable professional asset. He said it with the careful phrasing of someone thoroughly coached. Pamela asked him why, if those contributions were simply part of a shared life, he had accepted sole attribution at a professional awards ceremony. He said the submission had been administrative, handled by staff. Pamela asked him to name the staff member responsible. He could not. Judge T's ruling came on a Wednesday morning. It found that Nia's design contributions constituted a quantifiable professional contribution to the matrimonial business, to be valued accordingly. It ordered full disclosure of the numbered Alberta holding company and its integration into the matrimonial asset calculation. It ordered a 60-40 division of all matrimonial assets in Nia's favor, with compensatory damages for the deliberate concealment. And it referred the Bayview Award attribution to the Toronto Residential Design Association, with a note from the court on the evidentiary record. Craig's face did not change when the ruling was read. It was the expression of a man who had believed absolutely in the walls he had built, hearing the first one come down. Outside the courthouse, Denise was waiting on the steps. She said nothing, just grabbed Nia's arm and held on, and Nia laughed, the real kind, the kind that comes from somewhere deep and released. Her phone lit up, saw the filing outcome. "Congratulations. Dinner this week to celebrate?" She typed back, "Yes, somewhere with good wine." Mensah Built won the Lakeview waterfront bid in June. The selection panel cited the design integration and the coherence of the sustainability framework. Naya stood on her first full day as lead designer and looked at the site drawings spread across the project table, her drawings under her name, and felt something she had nearly forgotten. Not relief exactly, something more like arrival. She and Xavier had moved carefully with each other, the way people do when they have both lost things and are not interested in losing anything further. He didn't perform his feelings or deploy them as tactics. He simply said what was true. On an October evening walking the lakeshore near the Lakeview site, the city going gold in the late light, he said, "I want to keep building things with you. The work, the hard conversations, and the other things too, the dinners, all of it. I didn't want to leave that unspoken." She considered him specifically, not the idea of being with someone again, but the question of him, his patience. The way he asked her opinion and then actually adjusted his thinking based on what she said. The fact that he had seen her work before he knew anything else about her. "You'll need to be patient with me," she said. "I'm still recalibrating what I should have expected all along." "I'm not in a hurry," he said. "I just wanted you to know." She took his hand. The lake was very still. The Toronto Residential Design Association issued their correction in November. The Bayview Award was reattributed to Naya Holbrook, with a notation acknowledging the error in the original submission. Craig's name appeared nowhere, because it had never had any legitimate place there. She heard through Denise that Harwood Property Group had lost 2 significant clients following the fraud finding. That Brooke Keller had left the company and relocated within weeks of Craig's financial difficulties becoming visible in the industry. That Craig had hired and fired 2 new managers in 4 months and was operating on a substantially reduced project load. None of this produced satisfaction exactly. It settled into something more like correctness. An alignment between action and consequence that she had not known for certain she would see. She ran into Craig once in the spring. She was leaving a site meeting near Queen Street West, still in her field jacket, drawings tucked under one arm. He was walking the other direction and they nearly collided on the narrow sidewalk. He looked older, not ruined exactly, just reduced, like a structure from which load-bearing elements had been quietly removed. "Naya," he said. "Craig." She shifted the drawings under her arm. "How are you?" "Managing." He looked at the tube she was carrying. "Is that the Lakeview project?" "Phase 2, she said. "We broke ground in March." He nodded. Something moved across his face, unguarded, unstrategized, almost honest. "I saw the Bayview correction. Your name on the award." "Yes." "It was yours," he said. "It was always yours. I think I told myself a story about it that made it easier. But it was yours." Naya looked at him. She felt no surge of vindication, no impulse to press the point further. She had spent nearly a year in legal proceedings to establish exactly this fact in a formal, documented, permanent way. It was established. It did not require his corroboration to be real. "Take care of yourself, Craig," she said, and she meant it in the simplest possible way, just that, nothing more. She walked back toward the site, where Xavier was waiting by the temporary fence with 2 coffees from the place on the corner, asking about the entry sequence on level 3. She handed him the drawings and took the coffee, and they stood together looking at the foundation of the building they were making, and she understood something she hadn't been able to put into words until now. This balance, this being seen clearly by someone who was not afraid of what he saw, this was what it had always been supposed to feel like. The Lakeview building opened 18 months later. At the public unveiling, the program listed the design lead by name, not the firm, not a founding partner, her name. She stood in the entrance lobby she had designed. The double-height space with the birch panels and the lake view framed like a painting through the south-facing glass, and listened to people move through it and react to it. A couple stopped in the middle of the floor and just looked up. A child ran her hand along the timber paneling. An older man stood in front of the window for a long time without saying anything. The work she was capable of had always been there, present and intact, even in all the years she had spent making someone else's name larger. It had simply been waiting for conditions in which it could exist on its own terms. Those conditions had required losing almost everything first. She hadn't chosen the loss, she would never have chosen it. But standing here now in a space that was entirely and permanently hers, her concept, her execution, her name fixed to the wall beside the door, she found she couldn't regret the path that had brought her to it. The best thing Craig Harwood had ever done for her was assume she wouldn't fight back. She didn't need to tell him that. It was already written in the building.